I am going to make my own little DIY tutorial video here with a little sandpapering tip that I've found, and this is probably not a new thing. I'm sure people that sand stuff all the time, sir, painters, planning on staining my aunt's deck, and so I've used various different sanders. Ultimately, this one has been the most effective for me. Just this little square palm sander. I had an older sander that needed like 12-inch paper, and now everything is this 9 by 11, well, just this regular size. Well, I guess it's 11 inch. Yeah, it needed more like 12-inch sheets. Like, these sheets weren't even really great, but anyhow, the difficulty has been the fact that most of these variety packs of sandpaper that you get, it's not necessarily the grit I was worried about, it's just weak. I wound up buying belt sander, 36-inch belt sander loops, but they were like $10 each. Of course, you can cut a lot of squares that size. Originally, the one I was using was a longer rectangle, and like I said, it needed at least like 11 to 12 inch, but really 12 inches of paper to be able to grab anything on the end. And this thing grabs so weak, you know, and a lot of these are like this, where they really don't grab very much at all, and this thing gets bent. You got to use something to, like, you know, pinch that back down, like pliers or whatnot, to reshape this a lot, because this will get bent out of shape, and it really barely grabs. I mean, look, you put that, you know, when you put something in there and all it does is go right there, it barely puts any tension on it. So either you put this paper in and it would just like immediately rip at the edge, or it would slip out of this. So I was constantly replacing this type of paper. The belt sander paper, that's much more tough, like fibrous material, and it doesn't tear so easily. But basically what I've come up with is this solution here, which works great. And, you know, like I said, this is probably a known thing. This is duct tape. Duct tape to the rescue. I mean, you know, duct tape fixes the fix-all pretty much. So I'm sure, you know, I'm not the first person to figure this out, but don't see a whole lot about this online, so I figured I'd make this. Basically, let me see if I can, prop this up somehow so I can do this. And I was just gonna basically take here. Let me see. And pause for a second. Well, because this is kind of tricky to do and hold the phone, I don't have anything great to prop it up with, but pretty obvious what I'm gonna do. And I was doing this square by square at a time, but I decided it'd be faster and more efficient to just do the whole thing at once. But what I'm gonna do is basically, as I've got this, I overextend, I take duct tape and back the sheet, and it lasts so much longer. And basically I'm using the cheap paper to do these railings, but then when I do the really hard parts, like 4x4 corners of her deck, which have proven to be the harder parts, I'll probably use that belt sander stuff. But I'm backing all of it, even the belt sander stuff, up with duct tape now, because not only can I create a better tab, that's why I'm going over the edge here. So I'm going to start by going through the squares, through the center of the squares, and overextend it, and then just fold that back on itself a bit, and then go to this section, do the same thing. Then I'm going to back the whole thing, because that puts a little extra bit of a tab. Because with this, I've been cutting the paper too. I've been cutting the corners of the paper so that it has a tab. As you can see, most of these probably are very similar. And it's good to make like a little tab that goes in the center. It can't go all... If it goes all the way across, then it can only go up to that. But if you make a tab, you can kind of shove it in there a little bit further. Now, I know there's some working mechanisms in there. You don't want to go too deep, because you don't want to hit that. But I find that if you can get it over like that plastic, there's somewhat of a plastic tab that comes up. If you can get it a little bit over that, it gets a much better grip. But then on top of that, even though it's that side of the duct tape, it's still the vibrations. It winds up the adhesive it kind of rubs through. And so the adhesive also kind of helps it stick it to the square pad itself. So just overall, the durability goes up, the grip with a little bit of the extra tab that you put in, and I'll show the finished product. I'll pause and do it and show the finished product. But yeah, overall usability and the durability and how long it lasts, and it helps stick to it, all that improved by good old duct tape, of course, the fix-all. So I'll pause for the calls. I'll do this and just show a second of that. And as I said, I'm putting those two strips through the center of what'll be the squares, well, the rectangles, whatever. So the 4 rectangles I'm getting. I'm putting these 2 pieces through the middle first. That way, when I back it, the tape that goes over top will just further support what will end up being these tabs. So that's why I'm doing these 2 strips first, and I'm going to back the whole thing over it, and it'll just support holding that on as a tab. And like I said, I'm just going to, fold that over, and then that becomes a tab that can grab much better. I do still wind up usually cutting the 4 corners and making a tab here, but a little bit of extra there, I found. I haven't had a single paper rip or pull out on me since I've been doing this. So just for the sake of showing this in stages, step by step, simple steps, like I said, I just flipped it over and just folded it. Okay, so then I back the whole thing, like I said, and that further just supports what will be additional tabs. And this is the one instance when a duck has a gator's back. Ducks and gators can get along. Look at that. Alright. I just realized slight adjustment that I'll do on the next one, which I had to do here, was I had to add another piece of tape. I should have cut it this way. Cut the sheet that way first, since obviously each of these I want to have a little extra tab, so I added another piece, folded it over, but you get the point. Then I created a little additional tab, of course, with the sandpaper itself, but that little bit of extra, you can kind of get up over that plastic ridge, and it really holds good. And then, of course, I'm lining it up to where it goes inside of there, so that's pretty obvious. And then you can just put a couple sheets together and cut them together. So, put them together, cut the corners. Cutting corners when cutting corners is a good thing. So voila, and you wind up with 4 crosses out of it. That way, I made 4 at once. That way I don't have to constantly stop and make another one individually. But, like I said, ducks and gators can't get along. So, good old duct tape. The fix-all. Even save the astronauts. True story, look it up. Google it. So I'll just briefly show this in the light, and then what you wind up with, obviously. It's pretty obvious. Sorry for the length of this video, but it was kind of tricky holding this and doing this at the same time. Don't have anybody out here to hold the camera. But see how this one has kind of that plastic bridge, and with the additional little bit of this. But like I said, yeah, there's mechanism in there that moves. I don't want to shove it in there too heavily, but it hasn't caused any real issue with it. But lift that up, and then you can get the tab to kind of go over it. Yeah, I know. Don't go crazy because it's going in there too deep and it's hitting it. So I don't know. I haven't had any problems with it. It's completely solved the aggravation of having to change paper constantly, because this just does not get a very good grip. If you just put the edge of it and you don't make a tab at all, it can only go up to this, and then it just comes right out. And like I said, this cheap paper just rips constantly. Hit one thing, the first thing you hit, and it rips. It's like pointless. So voila, you got a nice piece. You've still got the whole square in the center, but the corners and the little tabs, just much better grip. And like I said, sorry for the length of the video, but it's pretty obvious. That's why I tried to pause and do things, make it shorter. But like I said, I don't claim to be the innovator of the duct tape backing sandpaper method. I'm sure a billion other people do it, and people that do this on a regular basis. I'm just not aware of a whole lot of videos about it or stuff online about it. I was like, what the heck do I gotta do? I guess it's a pretty obvious solution, but yeah, these DIY videos, they get a lot of views. Hopefully this one will.